Good morning. I'm pleased to welcome each of you to our second Re-CHARGING Reform Judaism conference. My name is Anshan. I'm one of the coordinators of this conference. We were not planning to have a second conference until the tragic events of October 7th challenged all of us, and especially our dear friends and family in Israel. Ami called me in December and suggested that we needed to hold this conference in order to come together and assess what October 7th and the war means for us as Reformed Jews in North America, and the impact this seminal event in Jewish history will have on our relationship to Israel, the state, the land, the people. How should we as Reformed Jews respond, engage with Israel, and work towards strengthening our relationship with all members of our community? Our relationship with Israel is an essential component of our Jewish identity. Now, more than ever, it requires us to think deeply about how we moved forward together. I did need to think for more than a few seconds to respond to Ami that we should begin immediately to plan this conference with Tracy and I working together as we did last year. We've all been immersed in October 7th and the horrible aftermath that continues to shatter our emotions every day. Next week, it will be 8 months since the war began. We have all been deeply touched with the personal stories we know of friends and relatives who have been murdered, injured, lost loved ones, and suffered terribly. And we watch in shock the many innocent civilians in Gaza who are being killed and injured, homes destroyed as a result of the war that Israel did not start. Allow me to offer a bit of context for our discussions. I know that many of us are calling our friends and our relatives each week in Israel to touch base and offer our support, listen to their stories of trauma. The degree of connection among us attests to the strength of our community. And on Sunday, I spoke with friends who many in this room know. Eri Castle, the former executive director of the IMPJ and a longtime member of Kibbutz Hatzarim, recounted that just a few weeks ago, a Hamas rocket landed in the kibbutz fields alongside the road that we all drive on to get to the kibbutz. And while his family is safe, the situation is really bad, and everyone worries about not getting the hostages back. For Eri and everyone in Israel, the atmosphere is very heavy. This past Sunday, you may recall that Hamas fired 8 rockets towards Tel Aviv, Herzliya, and Ramat HaSharon. Eri's daughters, who live in the area, called him to say they were safe and their families were safe. And at that point, Eri hadn't yet heard the news of the rocket attack. Hatzarim is the kibbutz where former General Amos Yadlin grew up, and his conversation with Ami on In These Times is an important analysis of the situation, and I encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to take time to listen to that conversation. Eri sends his regards and remembers fondly the close working relationship he had with you, Ami, in your role as Arts Executive Director. Over 20 years ago, before you came to this extraordinary congregation as the senior rabbi, a milestone celebrated last week by this congregation. Kibbutz Hatzarim is building homes for the members of Kibbutz Be'eri so that they will be able to live together until they can return to their own rebuilt homes on their kibbutz. Kibbutz Be'eri, where our friend Vivian Silver, a Canadian who made Aliyah in 1974, was murdered. For weeks, we thought she had been taken hostage, and we worked with the Canadian government to try and have her released by Hamas. Weeks later, her remains were identified. Vivian made Aliyah and joined Kibbutz Gezer, where she lived for many years before moving to Kibbutz Be'eri in 1990. Kibbutz Gezer, where the funeral service for Vivian was held on November 16th, attended by some 1,500 people, where two of them are our own Rabbi Miri Gold and David Leichman, members of Gezer. And Miri spoke at the funeral. And on Sunday, this past Sunday, I also spoke with Miri and David. Their family is fine, but Israel is not. They do what needs to be done to get by each day. Their trauma continues unabated. And last Shabbat, my wife and I were privileged to host Rabbi Yael Vergen and Cantor Lenore Engedi, the spiritual leaders of our Reform community in Shar HaNegev, in our home for Shabbat dinner. And since October 7th, they have been traveling throughout Israel to be with the members of their community who have had to be dispersed. We all have many stories. The heartbreak remains with us and will be in these halls during these 2 days as we discuss, confer, and think deeply about what we can do to strengthen the bonds even more. Many issues will be discussed: Israel education, social justice and interfaith, anti-Semitism and its impact on campus. One of the issues we will struggle with is how to have constructive conversations with our family members, our children, our friends, who hold conflicting views about Israel, the war, and the prospects for the future, and what role social media plays in the conveying information that informs our views. We have several leaders of our reform organizations attending, and we appreciate that they have made the effort to be with us. From the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, we welcome once again our dear friend David Bernstein, Director of Development. We are pleased to welcome from the World Union for Progressive Judaism, past Chair Carol Sterling and Vice Chair Andrew Keene, who once again is a member of our conference planning committee and will be speaking at one of our plenary sessions. We are pleased that many of our educators, members of the Association of Reformed Jewish Educators, are with us and have taken on a significant role in plenary and workshop planning. We're delighted to welcome Rabbi David Saperstein and Rabbi Josh Weinberg from the URJ, who will offer important insights into our movement's approach to many of the subjects we will be discussed. We are grateful that members of the HUC-JIR staff and faculty have taken the time away from their responsibilities to be with us, and we especially wish to thank Dr. Andrew Rayfeld, president of the college, who is with us again this year and will be speaking later this morning. Our particular thanks to Stephen Windmuller, who has contributed significantly to the planning of this conference and his contributions to our discussions. Thank you to Rabbi Erica Ash, CCAR president, for being with us and participating in one of our workshops. And I wish to thank my dear friend Ami for hosting this conference and being central to the team that planned this meeting. Our thanks to the staff of the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue for their time, energy, and attention to the multitude of details that brings us to this day. To Cantor Dan Singer and the Cantors for providing us with meaningful worship and music experiences, particularly the concert this afternoon. Many of you were instrumental in helping us think about and plan the content of this conference, and there are far too many of you to name all of you, including over 80 rabbis, cantors, educators, temple administrators, and lay leaders who added their names as supporters. We thank each of you for your commitment and ongoing support, and we thank our donors for their wonderful support to this conference. My personal thanks to my close friends Michael and Roberta Schroeder for their support and donations, including the registration bags. I end my thanks once again with a very special thank you to Rabbi Tracy Kaplowitz. Tracy did the very heavy lifting in coordinating all aspects of this conference. And this conference would not be happening without Tracy's energy and commitment to making it happen. In your bags, you'll find index cards and a pen, as we did last year. These cards are for you to write a question that you may have in each of the plenary sessions. They'll be collected prior to the Q&A in each of those sessions. It's appropriate that we take a moment to begin our time together with a prayer for the state of Israel and a prayer for the hostages.